Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias the Guy. So, something big really happened today that I don't think a lot of people caught on to. So, Trudeau went out and just blew $5 billion more of our taxpayers' money to Ukraine. Now there's a fair amount of Canadians that jump on, hey, this is great spending. There's a larger geopolitical war going on here that mainstream doesn't like talking about, but it's the reality. Now on the other show I had said that the RFK, when he crossed over, and I was talking about this whole Elon petition stuff, there was a lot more to those conversations that enabled them to agree on RFK crossing, first of all, to the Republican side, because this was a big hit to a lot of his family. And a lot of his family are oblivious to what's going on. They don't care, which really, like a lot of people, they don't know. If they knew, they would probably care more, and then things could change, but they don't. And our media is one of the worst. So Trudeau gave the $5 billion. And not 3 hours later, Trump said the tariffs are coming and they're coming fast. Now, a lot of people out there may say, well, how are you linking these together? I'm going to have to take you back in time, but I'm only going to do it using one person. And then at the end of this entire video, I'm going to link a documentary that I suggest everybody take the time to watch, because the greatest minds around the world, political, business outside of the WEF, the stronghold, and the brightest minds who have studied history around the world. And they're coming out and they're doing talk shows, and they're really trying hard to get past this global narrative, the war machine narrative. And in order for you to understand that, I think like I said, I'm going to use one man to tell you exactly what the entire Trump administration, including all the new crossovers, Democrats, and what really bolstered so many people to come out and support Trump early, even with the bashing and everything else that went on, is because they realized this guy knows what's going on. So I want you all to be able to understand where their headspace and actions are coming from. So without further ado, here's RFK Jr.
And we let me go back a little. In 1992, when the Soviets disbanded the Soviet Union, when Gorbachev disbanded it, he allowed us to unite Germany under East and West Germany under a NATO army. They moved out the Russian army, the Red Army, 450,000 troops, but the one promise he extracted, he said, you have to promise me that you will not move NATO to the east. James Baker, President Bush, John Major, all said in England, we will not move it 1 inch to the east, famously. And since then, we've moved it 1,000 miles to the east and into 14 countries. And the one thing they said is you can't put it in Ukraine. And that's what precipitated this war. We went in there in 2014. We overthrew the government, the elected government of Ukraine, put in a government that would invite NATO in, and the Russians responded. And the Russians asked for a peace treaty. We negotiated one. France, Germany negotiated the Minsk Accords. And then we double-crossed the Russians and wouldn't sign it. And then in April of 2022, Zelensky negotiated another agreement and initialed it with Putin. And Putin was withdrawing his troops. And President Biden sent Boris Johnson, the former Prime Minister of England, to Kiev to force Zelensky to tear up that agreement. And since then, 600,000 kids have died. And if that agreement if they just left it alone, Donbass and Lugansk would still be part of Ukraine, and all of those mineral wealth, and we wanted the war. And we've spent $200 billion, which, by the way, we need in this country. We've got a lot of desperate people in this country now. And we can't afford to be engaged in wars that are this close to nuclear engagement.
And so Trump is going to work on that with you. I mean, that was one of the things that you united on, right?
But he said from the beginning, I'll settle this. Whatever you say about President Trump, he's a real estate guy, and he'd rather do a deal than have a war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Russia, it's harder now to do a good deal because the Russians have made a profound sacrifice, and they're, and now Putin said from the beginning, I'm scared they're going to use Ukraine to attack Russia. So now Zelensky has confirmed that by sending a NATO-supported invasion of Russia in Kursk. And everything the Russians were saying about this from the beginning has turned out to be true. And so,
Okay. That's probably hard for a lot of you guys out there to swallow. This is what that administration thinks. This is what a lot of very influential and powerful people have seen happening. There is some really, really good interviews. Tucker actually did a couple here. And I believe Jordan Peterson did one about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. These people are trying really hard to get everybody to realize that this is what's going on, and how it's not just the military complex. The military complex has huge links and ties to the WEF. And the WEF is constrained between those ties and the investments that have came from China via the UN. Now, there's a lot here. It's hard for me to, it would take me days to explain this all. I'm trying to give it to you as quick as I can and just lay it down. So the worst news possible to Trump, the worst insult that Canada could do right now, our useless lame duck did.
Ukraine. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pledged additional armored vehicles to the war-ravaged country.
Canada stands at the ready to work with our partners around the world to provide Ukraine the security it needs for the peace to last, allowing it to recover, rebuild, and prosper.
Now, did you hear what he said? He's sending weapons and stuff down there to help the peace remain. You don't keep the peace by bringing more guns, more bullets, more death, more carnage. Trump's trying to end this war. And this idiot, to slap Trump in the face, to be the 5-year-old that he is, has just put Canada in Trump's crosshairs. Three and a half hours later.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly. We've been mistreated very badly by many countries, not just Canada and Mexico. We've been taken advantage of. We were led by, in some cases, fools, because anybody that would sign documents like they signed, where they were able to take advantage of the American people, like has happened over the last long period of time, except for a little 4-year period that took place 4 years ago. But anybody that would agree to allow this to happen to our country should be ashamed of themselves. No, the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even...
Okay. He's pissed. Now, how do I know this? I'm going to play you some more of the Steve Bannon interview. And we're going to slowly piece this all together.
Look what's happened in Ukraine in 3 years, and we've been adamantly opposed to any involvement in Ukraine. It was ridiculous. As President Trump reiterated today, 1.5 million people have either been slaughtered or wounded in this war. 1 million Ukrainians and 500, 750,000 Russian troops. Ukraine looks like Kiev. If you look at the carnage that's gone on, you throw in the Middle East, it's far greater than the early years of the Second World War, and we saw how that ended. If you also look at the Chinese Communist Party, unrestricted warfare, the Chinese Communist Party has been at war with the United States since May of 1989. Xi said it, the People's War. They're doing it through cyber, they're doing it through political warfare, they're doing it through information warfare, they're doing economic...
Political interference in Canada?
Canada, you guys are much far... Look, as badly as we're infiltrated, Canada's actually worse. And Trudeau's exacerbated this. This is something the Canadian people got to wake up to. You're losing your sovereignty as you speak. That's why your crisis on your northern border. The irony in Canada, given everything through valor of arms and courage that you've defended, now what was always strategically your greatest, the thing you had greatest, which was your northern border and kind of the Arctic, now becomes your greatest exposure to actual losing territorial integrity and sovereignty, the Chinese Communist Party, which has already infiltrated Canada. Look at Huawei. Look at all the situations in Canada. They're at war just because, remember, in Chinese Communist Party doctrine, if they have to start like Sun Tzu, if they have to start shooting, they think the kinetic part, which has already started in Europe and Ukraine, the kinetic part of the war is where they don't want to take on the foreign devils, right? Because the foreign devils know how to man up and know how to fight. What they want to do is unrestricted warfare, is defeat the West even before any guns are fired. And they're quite far advanced in the United States, and I would argue they're farther advanced in Canada. So people sit there and go, well, we're not really at war. That's like people in Europe in 1930, in the summer of 1939, sitting there going, we're actually not at war. It's a beautiful summer here. And the clouds of war were all over them. They just couldn't see over the horizon.
It was around 2010. I think it was President Hu back then was coming to Canada. He was going to visit then Prime Minister Stephen Harper. Official visit, things had not changed. Even the bipartisan consensus in Washington still hadn't changed towards China. It has now, and it has in Canada. Well, maybe not for Trudeau's Liberals. But I remember reading a piece where Hu said, before he left, I mean, this was clearly a planted message to send to Canada as he was coming for a visit, that they view themselves as an Arctic nation, and they believe that they get the resources in the Arctic. They have a very different vision of the future of the Arctic than Canada or the United States does. And it includes them pillaging it.
It includes them controlling it and controlling the territory of northern Canada. You're absolutely correct. This is not just something that came to President Trump out of nowhere. This is the aggressiveness of the Chinese Communist Party in the Arctic, geostrategically and for resources. And as a wake-up call, when they say the Arctic, they just don't mean the polar cap. They mean coming down, and you're going to lose. It's just quite simple. You're a Dominion nation. But in your alliance in the Dominion, is NATO going to come and help you? Is NATO that won't pay for themselves? Are they going to come and help you in the Arctic? The territorial integrity and sovereignty of Canada is going to be tested and lost in the northern provinces and around Canada. And he said it on a state visit.
Now, I'm just going to piece a couple small clips to give you an idea of what's really going on.
The Washington Post is reporting that according to leaked documents, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has privately told NATO officials Canada will never meet its NATO defense spending targets. That revelation was contained in a leaked secret Pentagon assessment obtained by the Washington Post. Global News has been unable to verify it. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stevenson is with me. Mercedes, Canada hasn't met the 2% of GDP target for NATO funding for more than, I think, 20 years. But to say we'll never meet it, is that just widely accepted now?
Well, and Donna, it's remarkable because it's a departure from the government's public stance on this. And I thought back to when President Joe Biden was here, and I checked the press release to make sure I wasn't imagining this. Sure enough, in there is a reference to Canada and the United States taking the Wales Pledge seriously. That is the pledge to spend 2% as per NATO's requirements. And yet what we're hearing now is that the Prime Minister may be seeing something very different behind closed doors. He was asked whether or not he told NATO Canada will not get to 2% earlier today. This is what he said.
Listen to this smug.
I continue to say and will always say that Canada is a reliable partner to NATO, a reliable partner around the world, and with our military investments, with the support we give to Canadians, we will continue to be doing that.
Donna, a reliable partner is not, yes, we will get to 2%. And interestingly, when I spoke to senior government sources, there was no sense to me that they were striving for that. They're citing current defense investments in things like planes and ships. But experts say that that's the absolute minimum required for Canada to be able to maintain its sovereignty. So,
did you hear that? It's sovereignty. Not only is the American government really mad at Canada for the NATO thing. Now you understand what Trump knows, what Bannon knows, what every studied historian and is what China is doing today knows, as well as the opposite side of the coin, which is the military complex. He has a battle on 3 fronts. He knew it was coming. This is how he got the backing he got and why they decimated the Democratic Party. Yes, Biden was definitely on his way out, and they tried everything with Harris that we're seeing them do now to Carney. They are trying to force us as a nation into having the prime minister of their choice. They will feed this war. They will lie to you, they will deceive you, and they will burn through your tax dollars like never seen before. NATO ain't gonna protect us. I can tell you that right now. As far as they're concerned, we should be kicked out.
But over the course of nearly 20 years, we haven't even reached that. I can tell you also that the pressure is on that we've never seen before. We have basically 2/3 of the members of the U.S. Senate calling out Canada for its lack of action on this. And what we do have is a defense plan which says that we will meet by 2030, we'll get to 1.76% of GDP. But that is still way off the mark, Marcia.
Way off the mark, Judy. Yeah. So let me ask you then lastly about Joe Biden. Of course, we have the agenda.
So NATO's done. They're done with us. And Trump is right mad at NATO as well. NATO can't exist without the United States. It won't happen. NATO will implode without the United States. 78%, something like that, of all the arms that NATO has to purchase through their agreements comes from American factories. American military contractors. That's the way it is. And they've been spending, well, they've paid for everybody but like 3 countries since NATO was started. So they're tired of it. And they see what's coming, and they see how infiltrated we are on both sides. So he's cleaning house. He's cleaning house. He's cleaning his own house. And he's going to start cleaning house on us. It's going to happen. especially if we've got an idiot like that who just went against. Like I swear, that is the stupidest thing any person could possibly do if they're in his position. I'm just in shock. Let's listen to a little bit more.
But does that necessarily mean, I mean, his latest word to describe it is absorbing Canada. Does that mean the United States has to absorb Canada, how do you work together?
The form of that is to be determined. Remember, President Trump is a master deal maker, but I do think, just like he's making a deal now about Ukraine and getting that war done, he's doing a deal in the Middle East to get that done. He's a deal guy. He's a deal guy.
And he has talked about Canada as much as he's talked about the Middle East, probably more lately than he's talked about Ukraine.
More. I tell folks I say, see where he spends his time, see what his default position when he's got some free time. This thing about Greenland, Panama, and you have to look at it whole cloth. This is about hemispheric defense and what this market means to the world and what this market means to the citizens in this market. So he's obsessed with this issue of Canada. So now I think there will be, what form it takes. I don't speak for the president. That's the president, and he's got ideas about how he wants to see things evolve. I would talk to, but I believe that leaders in Canada, I think he is waiting for however it plays out for the new government. I do believe they're going to have serious talks. Now, the people around him, that leaders in Canada, I think he is waiting for however it plays out for the new government. I do believe they're going to have serious talks. Now, the people around him talking about defense and things like that, I think it's fantastic. But don't doubt for a second that the man himself is, quite frankly, very obsessed with this. And if you look at the strategy and the economics of it, it's so compelling. He's not going to get off this. He's going to get engaged with whoever your government is, and there will be a process going forward. Now, what's the ultimate outcome of that process? That's not my line of country.
So, for the people you said.
So there you have it. Now, I've seen some very credible hints coming out of the administration that they were actually aware that they know that Parliament has been prorogued. They understand completely what's going on there. But it sounds as though they even knew or know that our courts, Supreme Court, was going to rule on this illegal use of prorogation. Now, it's been too long. Trump is done waiting for a new government. And this deal today was what triggered it. Trudeau went purposefully, or just because he's an idiot, but I do believe it was purposefully. I believe it was a guided attempt from his handlers to do this. And we are really going to suffer the consequences.
The deal of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany is too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%. And I guess he's not very happy about it. I mean, you were there, a couple of you were there, and he's not paying 2%, and he should be paying 2%. It's Canada, they have money, and they should be paying 2%. So I called him out on that, and I'm sure he wasn't happy about it, but that's the way it is. Look, I'm representing the U.S., and he should be paying more than he's paying, and he understands it. So I can imagine he's not that happy, but that's the way it is.
So, I'm going to add the link to this documentary. I think everybody should see this. This was put out before all of this went down. It was a warning that literally I watched this documentary get censored on YouTube about 6 months, 7 months before the United States got Zelensky in power. And only literally since the Trump presidency, when he won, can you find this with the click of a mouse. That's how fast it changed. So I urge you to watch it. It's a long documentary. It's like an hour and a half. I can look at it. It's like an hour and 35 minutes. It's worth every minute. It's, I believe, part one of, I think there's like 3 that he did on the area. This is the main one I believe you should watch. This deals with what's going on today and what the administration sees and believes. So if you want to see where the Americans are coming from, and not just the Americans, like I said, there's heavy division and certain parties are starting to win and turn their countries around. Germany was another hint of that today. So, yeah, I hope this straightened out and shows you the urgency that Canada needs to have an election tomorrow. It has to happen, and we cannot allow our government to install Mark Carney or any other Liberal for that effect. But it will be Mark Carney. I hope you all had a mind-blowing experience with me for the last 25 minutes. I hope you liked it. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, you've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias Tagai.